What started as a kid writing joke songs became someone who discovered music could help him process anxiety, heartbreak, and life. And today we're discussing learning how to create without carrying the emotional weight of every song. Jesus Hernandez is on with me today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
So this is really fun because some most of the time I know my guests before they join the show, but you and I just connected on a Facebook group for Nashville musicians, and so I just discovered you and your songwriting and some of your projects in the last couple weeks. So I have so many questions to ask you.
Sure.
But let's start at the beginning because we spoke briefly before we sat down today, and you told me that you had started writing music at a really young age. You had picked up a guitar for the first time when you were 10. Exactly how old were you when you wrote your first song? And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, uh, I guess the word song can be used kind of loosely, but I'll consider the first one to be the first one that had like lyrics and stuff like that. Um, I'm gonna say I had to be maybe like 11 or 12 years old.
Wow.
And it kind of came about with my cousins and I we all kind of started playing instruments at the same time, and we would jam and kind of improvise. Even the lyrics would be improvised, and my cousin came up with one improvised line that was, "You didn't drink enough milk when you were a kid." And I just kind of took it and ran with it and kind of fleshed out an entire song about it. And it was kind of funny. It's about, and I know that this is not how it works, but not drinking enough milk as a kid, led to you having really weak bones and breaking them when you fall down, and then you become lactose intolerant and all kinds of. It's not exactly how it works, and that's what makes the song funny. But
Yeah.
it was simple, and I just kind of I threw it together just for fun. So.
Well, and you mentioned that you were heavily influenced by Tenacious D and the Vandals, and so were you trying to be funny from the jump, or and mimic their style?
I wouldn't say I was trying to mimic their style, but that's just, what you get in is what comes out.
Yeah.
And, obviously if I was listening to a lot of stuff that was on the lighter, funnier side, that's what I was going to be putting out. I was also listening to a ton of Blink 182. That was like the first band I ever got into.
Yeah.
And obviously they can go either way. They can either be like kind of emotional or they can be, hilarious. So as a 11-year-old, 12-year-old, I kind of gravitated towards the stuff that would make me laugh. So
Gotcha. What was it about music that hooked you before songwriting entered the picture?
that's a really interesting question because as a little kid, I liked music, but I didn't I wasn't super into music. I didn't think it was important. It
Yeah.
wasn't like an important part of my life. My mom was very into music. My whole family's very musical. They don't all play instruments or anything, but they're all big music fans. I was dead set on becoming a secret agent after seeing like the first Mission Impossible
Yeah.
movie with Tom Cruise. And so that's what I was like, let me do something like really cool and really important. And I guess what had happened was my mom was like, you know what, that's really dangerous. I'm going to put you in like an acting summer camp and maybe you can like act as like a spy, and that'll be a little bit safer. And when I was at these they were like spring and summer session acting camps, I made a friend there that he was really into all the punk and pop punk stuff, and he would like give me one of his earbuds, and I would kind of listen to it, and you know I thought a lot of that was cool. This is also around the same time that I'm not sure if you're familiar. Everybody is at this point. The Tony Hawk Pro Skater video games.
Yeah.
Those soundtracks were. I was getting to the age where I was starting to like some of the songs on that kind of stuff, and then just if it was fast and kind of a little bit obnoxious, I was like, oh, this is, I can listen to this. It's not like I have to listen to Journey or something. So
Right. Yeah. So what you were saying when we were talking before today that you initially contributed guitar parts more than lyrics when you first really started diving into music. So when was it that you realized that you actually had something to say?
I was in high school. I had been playing already in a couple of punk bands, like just playing guitar,
Mm.
not really contributing lyrics because I wasn't like a super political kind of guy or anything like that, and I wasn't into, you know, I wasn't trying to stir the pot too much. But I guess as I was getting older, and I was like kind of chubby. I had like people kind of make fun of me for my weight and stuff like that. But also, I had, started trying to date and, getting into these really bad relationship type situations where I felt like people did stuff that was really kind of hurtful to me. And I eventually just started using the songwriting kind of as an outlet for that. And it wasn't intentional. It's just it would come to me, and that's what would come out. And and then it just kind of became, without thinking about it, just the way that I would sort of deal with any issues that were difficult for me to confront.
So was it just like a culmination of a couple of things that were happening, or was there like one particular moment where you realized that songwriting was going to be therapeutic for you?
I I don't think I realized that I was using it therapeutically, honestly, until maybe my early or mid 20s. Actually, I would just like let it out and just not really think about it. It was like cathartic. It's like, here, I've said what I had to say. I like made it rhyme, and I made it kind of catchy, and there it is. Now I can move
Yeah.
on to the next thing. But I wouldn't really think about it as kind of therapeutic. And nowadays when I find myself in that kind of a situation, I'll sort of know that that's what I'm doing, and I might think about it a little bit harder. So
Yeah. When you look back at the early stages of your songwriting, do you like hear now today listening back, do you hear someone trying to process like what they were going through in life, or do you hear someone who is maybe trying to escape what they were going through?
definitely a little bit of both. A lot of what I do is there are different styles of writing music. Like, some people will tell stories, some people will give you like a visual description of something. And what
Yeah.
I kind of leaned into heavily was like describing a feeling, sort of.
Hmm.
And I think in the process of describing the feeling, obviously that leans more into somebody just trying to figure out, trying to process their situation and what's going on.
Yeah.
But within that, obviously there's going to be a little bit of storytelling, and there is a little bit of I wouldn't call it escapism, but like me, like probably everybody else, started experimenting with like alcohol, too young. And that kind of shows up in songs that I was writing when I was like 16 years old. And that obviously is sort of, you know, points in the direction of trying to escape from,
Yeah.
the, the things that are bringing me down, essentially. And, that in itself also became a thing kind of bringing me down. And then I'd have to cathartically write about that as well. So, it was a cycle that sort of fed itself for a little while.
Yeah. What's the major difference between your songwriting now and your songwriting then?
Back then I would just kind of spit it out. And now, as an adult, because I'm probably about, you know, I've been writing songs for more than 20 years at this point. What I tend to do now is I try to look at things from, you know, every possible angle when I'm trying to kind of hone in on what I'm trying to say. And also, I used to just kind of, like I was saying, just blurt it all out. But now things will come to me kind of like in a line, and then like right after like another line, and they'll all just kind of fit together. They won't necessarily like make sense together, and I'll have to kind of like chip away at it until like I get a meaning out of it, and then I'll have to reassess and be like, yeah, so what exactly am I trying to say here? I'm sure there's something subconsciously I'm trying to say. Is
Yeah.
this making sense? And I'll like, go through a lot more variations. I've definitely simplified my writing process as far as like the statement, the lyrics, and the like chord progressions, even the musicality of it is also a lot simpler than it used to be. But that's, when you're young, you want to go all out. You want to do
Yeah.
everything as extreme as possible. And, now I'm a little older. I already have a lot of stuff going on. So I don't want to make the music more of a burden on me than,
Yeah.
than the things that I'm trying to process.
Um, so diving a little bit more into that particular point that you're making about music feeling almost like a burden, like the process of it, the process of the songwriting, because you mentioned that briefly before we sat down today, that it almost sounded like in a certain way you kind of had to get out of your head maybe. Can you talk a little bit more, like elaborate on that moment that songwriting started to almost feel more like a job and less like a passion?
Yeah, like I said, I had a tendency to like go really extreme and kind of
Yeah.
overdo things, like layering a lot of instruments and being very wordy, having a lot of different parts to every song
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I think that was all kind of a reflection of the chaos that I was experiencing in my life. And then about 10 years ago, I met the woman that is now my wife. And a lot of things in my life started to really, like, kind of level out and, not be so crazy. I felt a lot more safe and a lot more comfortable in general with a lot of things.
Mhm.
And there's a pretty direct shift from like very, chaotic and a lot of transitions and, really sad music to to stuff that's just like, you know what, maybe I could just play one chord progression. I have a very simple chorus that's easy to catch on to, and I just say the thing I got to say, as simply as possible and then move on.
Yeah.
Like why make it more complicated if I don't have to? And I think, a big part of that was, not really like feeling like I was fighting for my life anymore, kind of.
Yeah.
Not that I was literally fighting for my life, but and
Yeah.
when things get a little bit tough, you can feel like your head's underwater, and like things can seem bleak, and
Yeah.
you know, I was no longer really feeling that way.
Yeah. When you say that there's like a pretty direct shift between those two styles of songwriting, um, are there like two particular songs, like the last one you wrote when life felt chaotic, and then the first one you wrote when things felt a little bit more grounded? Can we hear it, in the music? Like, would we be able to pick it out?
Yeah, I think you probably could. Unfortunately, the last song that I had written right before that transitional period is not released, but I am planning on releasing. I have a like a really long backlog of songs that I have been trying to rework and get them out because,
Okay.
I've only got the one solo release out and, a bunch of other stuff that I did in collaboration with bands. And, so that song is really chaotic. It's got nothing repeats, I'll play, like a verse, if you want to call it that. And then right after that, there's like a different part and there's probably about 10 or 15 different sections to the song. Nothing ever repeats. And it's, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
And then after that, I guess the most direct reflection is that I did end up starting a band with my wife at the time. She was just my fiance, where she had never played drums before, but she got behind the drums and started hitting stuff, and I started just playing guitar. And I wrote this song called "I Wish I Was a Dog." It's by the band Pink Frosty. If anybody wants to check it out, it's on Bandcamp and Spotify, and it's 2 chords. And it's talking about how simple life would be if I was a dog. It's very happy, like fun summertime. There's a cool music video with a bunch of dogs hanging out in the pool and running around, and it's very different from what I was doing before. So I'd say that's probably the most stark contrast right there.
That's kind of a funny thought because I find myself saying that to my husband a lot when we walk our dog. Like, can you imagine what life is like for this guy? Just prancing along, having a great time. Like, the best thing to ever happen to him today is that he went on a walk and had a treat.
Yeah, exactly. I'm basically comparing it to like, everybody would love me and scratch my belly and give me toys instead of having to go to work and, I have to talk to people and stuff. And, it's basically like, dogs got it pretty easy. Sometimes you just, I wish I was a dog.
So, when it comes to the music that you've written and maybe have not released yet, but plan to, what is it like to go back through those songs and reflect on them now, like being in such a different emotional space?
It's really, really interesting because, it's a lot. It's maybe close to 200 songs.
Wow.
And I had been playing them, at acoustic shows for years and years and years, and I've released very little of it somehow. And I have, I've got demos, like tons of demos of these tracks, but they never really came out the way that I wanted them to come out, sonically. And, I'm my day job or my night job, whatever. What I do for work is that I'm a professional audio engineer, so I'm now much more well equipped to at least make that side of it happen. But then I go back and I read the lyrics and I'm like, man, like it's like the hooks are there, the idea is there, but there's something that's not like, it's obviously not a very mature perspective.
Okay.
Compared to like what I would have now in the same situation, I would probably write something different. And so I do find myself kind of like editing, doing a little bit of a revision to some of these songs, sometimes just like removing something I feel is in excess and kind of repeating another part that fits there just to, because they're like redundancies, there's how many ways do you need to say the same thing? And then there are other ones where I'm reading it and I'm thinking like, man, what exactly was I even trying to say for this song? And then I'll kind of take whatever the big themes are that I can pull out and say, how can I apply this to, my life right now? Because, feelings are very applicable, like, and universal. Like everybody feels like, well, almost everybody feels the full range of emotions, like at any given time, for any reason. So, I'm like, if I'm relating to one particular track that I had written, say 15 years ago, but the whole, like, lyrically, it's not really doing it for me, I'll just kind of go back and say like, these 3 parts are good. I got to change this last line and maybe like reorder some stuff. So there's a little bit of revision going on with some of them, but there is also a point after which I'm like, oh, these songs don't really need the revision. They just kind of need to be recorded so they don't sound like an iPhone recording.
Yeah.
So
When you're going back through those songs and you're making all these revisions and, like revisiting them now as somebody who's like more mature and has more experience, do you find yourself kind of like battling internally? Like, because I guess my point in the question is, do you feel like in some way you might be kind of jeopardizing the integrity of what you wrote before, or are you like completely comfortable with rereading and re-listening to what you've done before and just modifying it how it needs to be today?
that's a good question. So the answer is that, there are, a few songs that I have released that I also kind of feel like I want to go back and do some revisions on. But since other people have already kind of heard those are a little bit weirder for me to go out and kind of make an alteration to.
Okay.
But since these other songs have only really been heard in a live setting,
Yeah.
it's almost like I never finished the song.
Right.
Because these days the recording is the standard, right? Like people don't go to a show, see you play a song one time, and then remember exactly how it went. And like,
Right.
if you changed it at the next show, they'd be like, "Oh, what happened?" But if you have recorded it and then you listen to the recording and it's like, "Oh, wait, the lyrics are different now," that might be a little bit confusing. So that's part of my perspective that keeps me from feeling like messing with the integrity of it is just
Okay.
that, you know, only maybe a few hundred people have heard these songs over the course of my life. And, there are maybe 5 people that I think of in my friends group that might know that I changed something. So
Right.
not a
Okay.
huge deal.
You're not throwing too many people off all at once.
Yeah, yeah. It's like they're still in like I'm still in the process of writing it. It just I
Yeah.
took like a 20-year break.
Well, so you've existed in both like the hardcore punk and the acoustic songwriter spaces. Is there something that you feel like you can say through like yelling in a punk song that you can't say, like sitting alone with a guitar?
You know, it depends because there are a lot of subgenres of the punk and hardcore stuff, and with like the pop punk bands, whatever you can do with an acoustic guitar, you could do it with like a pop punk band. So that's
Yeah.
that's kind of where I tend to land. But there's like the more tough guy hardcore stuff where people are kind of swinging fists the whole time, and it's hard to move that to an acoustic guitar. And if you did, it would be kind of funny, and I might even do that because it's funny.
Yeah.
Just to have a laugh about it. But
Yeah.
I never really got into that. I tried it on for size for a year maybe, but like that was not really my thing. I've always been more into more melodic and emotive
Yeah.
sounding stuff. So really, I feel like there should be, if it's a good song that's about like the song itself, you should be able to go either way with it. But if it's a very technical piece, like I used to play drums in a hardcore punk band that everything was odd time signatures and like drastic tempo changes and like a lot of pauses and weird crazy stuff going on. And those songs you could never turn into an acoustic song, and I tried. So so I know. But there are limitations to it, but anything that you do with an acoustic guitar, you could definitely go the other way with it.
Was there ever a particular song that you wrote that you knew could only exist in one of those spaces, or was it kind of like a trial and error? Like, did you did you try to do a song in both of those spaces and realize that it didn't work, or
Well, I kind of had them very separate at first. I had like the louder, heavier stuff that I was playing, and then on the side I kind of did the softer acoustic stuff, and like never imagined ever, playing any of those songs with a band. Maybe with like an additional acoustic guitar or something like that, or like a stand-up bass, but not like with a louder full band. But eventually, since I play everything that I can get my hands on, so I can record drums, bass, keys, whatever. I did experiment with like, oh, what if I took this, acoustic song and like just kind of fleshed it out. And a lot of the times it worked, and sometimes I'm like torn between like, does this one work both ways? Should I just have two versions of it? But, there are a couple songs that it's like this. You see, now my dog's barking up there. I don't know if you can hear him. But there's a couple songs that I've written more recently, because I'm relegated to recording in the basement at like 2 a.m. when everybody's asleep, because kids and dogs and everything like that
yeah.
are pretty loud. So I guess my writing style has changed a little bit, and there's a few songs I've written now that, I start off with an acoustic demo and then I try to add stuff onto it, and I'm like, maybe this song is just fine with an acoustic guitar and a vocal, and I just leave it like that, like why
Yeah.
overdo it? But there's one song that I had written. I wrote it. I didn't know what band it was for. And I tried it out with my pop punk band Fat Judge. And it was never recorded with Fat Judge. It was recorded with our side project Jury Duty, and that was never released. And so I just kind of took that song and I fleshed it out, and it's the second track on Go Tell Somebody Who Care. Go Tell Somebody or Someone, whatever, on my A Really Bad Idea album, Go Tell Someone Who Cares. It's the second track on there. It's called Through a Straw. And that
Okay.
one went through, a few bands before it ended up being just like my solo track. So, and I
Okay.
have another one actually that I was writing for myself, and I was like, oh, maybe I should try to use this one for like a Fat Judge track. And because we're all much older now, and we're all like trying to remote record a couple things, trying to get the whole band on board with it. And I was like, maybe I should use this song for collaboration with these guys. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna keep it, you know.
Yeah. You said in our initial conversation that you can hear a sentence and suddenly it'll become a song for you. What is
Yeah.
the most random thing that's ever sparked an idea?
That's a really, really good question. I'm trying to think about it right now, because it doesn't always end up being in the final in the final product of the song.
Okay.
Um, but I guess there's a more recent track I wrote that's called "In the Valley." It's not yet released, and I was out of town doing some work, and I was just not in a good mood, and the opening line is, "I'm sick of always being at this place," and it was because I was like on the phone with my wife, and I was like, "I'm sick of always being at this place," and it just kind of stuck with me, and then like turned into a 3 minute song. So that's one of them. Uh, there's another. I've moved around a lot in my life, and it's it's always kind of it's always for the better, but it's always difficult to sort of like start over with things. So
Yeah.
I have another track that I've been working on, where the lyrics go, um uh sick of starting over, tired of going nowhere. And, because that was the thought that came into my head. Like, I was sick of starting over with stuff, and, tired of going nowhere just rhymes with that. And then it just,
Yeah.
that turned into like a 30-minute song because I had so much stuff just flowing out, and I've really had to like scale it back on that one. But yeah, there'll be a situation that I won't even be thinking about doing anything musically, and a sentence will kind of just stick with me, and I'll be like, it's the way that's, the way that the sentence was said is a little bit musical. I
Yeah.
actually, there is a pretty good example of it on my Pink Frosty is the band I did with my wife. On our first release, it's called The Big Move. There's a song called, it's either called Bamboo or Look at All That Bamboo. And it's, we were around a bunch of bamboo, and I just said, look at all that bamboo. And then I was like, that's pretty musical. It's like, look at all that bamboo. Look at all that bamboo. And it just kind of turned into a song, just like stuck in my head like that, and just kind of, took it and ran with it.
Yeah. Well,
So
and now I'm starting to see why there's like 200 songs in the arsenal that you
yeah, I can't turn it off. It's very difficult. So
Do you ever wish you could?
no.
Okay.
No, I wish I could just get the stuff out faster so I could kind of move on with stuff. I feel like that's a long catalog to not have stuff out, and I feel like if I could just push it out, maybe I
Yeah.
would just even stop coming up with ideas. But
Yeah. How has your inspiration for your songwriting changed as you've gotten older? Has it gotten easier or more difficult, or does it seem to come more naturally, or like how is it different from when you first started?
well, when I first started, I would say what I had was a lot of what people call first world problems, like stuff that's
Okay.
not a big deal, but like when you're young, it's like the worst thing in the world. And those things are pretty easy to just vent about really fast. And as an adult, as a fully formed adult, I guess maybe potentially, the things that start to bug you are a little bit, they have to be heavier. I'm not like, obviously I'm not crying about getting dumped at this point because I've been married for several years. I've got 2 kids, and I'm very happy, and I don't have that particular issue, so I'm not
Yeah.
writing about that. But there are issues like, exhaustion, like being homesick, and maybe feeling like like you're not doing the right thing, in your life and for the people that you're trying to support and stuff like that. And those things kind of weigh a little bit heavier, but they take longer to develop. And so it's not something that's like, oh, this happened and I'm just like, I got to vent about it really quick. It's something that'll build up over a period of time until finally you're like, oh, I'm just, I'm feeling this way, and like it's been difficult to kind of manage, you know, and process what I'm going through, because it's like it's a lot heavier than, the problems that somebody has in high school or in college. Not that you can't have serious problems at those ages, but I didn't, and now my issues are just very different, and they I have a different perspective as well. So
Yeah. And you mentioned before that sometimes songwriting can be kind of emotionally taxing. How do you deal with it and push forward in those moments?
well, I took a very long break from writing stuff that I would consider to be emotionally taxing. So there's like a hard stop from, it's pretty much when I started playing with Pink Frosty, which again is the band with my wife, where all the songs that I had done before that were pretty serious and on like the, the sad boy type of side of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
then all the Pink Frosty stuff is like not a joke, but like very like light and like fun. Like,
Yeah.
and some of them are funny. That's the point was to make it feel not so heavy. So, I'll write songs about, obviously like being a dog. There's a lot of songs about dogs in that band. A lot of songs about food. There's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like we don't get enough songs about food, honestly. But pizza for breakfast. I guess it's kind of a funny concept for a song. So there's just I was like again I hear something and I end up writing a song and I can't turn it off.
Yeah.
And I just what was coming in is what was going out, and what was coming in was not super heavy and not super emotionally taxing, and so I kind of rolled with it.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you like truly found the joy in what you love to do because, there are so many people who go through this like really like strenuous and like, emotionally taxing like process of songwriting and processing emotion and like talking about like really heavy situations, but it sounds like you're in a place now where the music is just so lighthearted and fun and you're genuinely doing it because it's something that you love and it brings you joy.
Yeah, and at the same time, I'm still doing a ton of I guess unlicensed music therapy for myself, you could say. But it's like I used to feel like I was like a Taylor Swift, like, oh, this thing happened, I'm gonna put it out there. And now it feels very different. Like, also, I've got no obligation to put out any kind of music if I don't feel like it. But
Yeah.
I do it because I like to do it. And if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do something that I'm gonna like. And right now, what I'm liking is not the ultra depressed stuff. There is, again, I still do use the music therapy approach, I guess is what it kind of is.
Mhm.
And even with those songs, I've been taking a little bit more of a like, the song's kind of serious, but let me like drop something in there that's like a little bit like funny, a little bit tongue in cheek, something to kind of like break up the tension just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you know you can't be super down all the time. Sometimes you gotta there. Life has all of it. So
Yeah. If somebody were to listen to your entire catalog today from, the joke songs and or like maybe some of your earlier stuff, the punk bands and some of your acoustic material even, is there one particular thing that you would hope they would understand about you or like walk away feeling or thinking about you?
I would hope that they would walk away feeling like I'm a very well-rounded individual. No, that like you know everybody feels, or almost everybody feels, the full range of emotions at any given time.
Yeah.
So there's some bands that you can only listen to if you're angry. Some bands you can only listen to if you're like, you know, feeling really depressed. Some bands you can only listen to if you're in a really good mood. And I kind of try to just have an even spread of that. So there's a little bit of something for everybody. And I would hope that people can identify with, you know, at least something. Like, no matter what way you're feeling, I
Yeah.
probably have written something that kind of is in that realm, something that sort of reinforces or like or what's the word? Just something to let you know, like, you're not the only person that has felt this way about this thing. Or
Yeah.
like, you're not the only person that wants to like actually enjoy yourself sometimes.
Right. Right. So walking away feeling validated.
Sure, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I like that. Is there an artist that does that for you aside from some of the influences you've already mentioned?
There's a couple of them, yeah. One of them being the Black Lips. They were kind of a garagey punk band. Now they do like all kinds of stuff from Atlanta, and they, again, full range of emotions. They've got stuff that's like funny. They've got stuff that's just like kind of fun and lighthearted. They've got stuff that's a little bit on the sad side. You they've got at any given time like 4 or 5 songwriters in the band, so you're getting a lot there. And another one is this band Custard, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with the show Bluey.
Oh
It,
yeah.
the dad, the voice actor for the dad, it's his band from Australia. They've been around since like the early '90s, I think, and they're kind of like a pop punk indie band, and they're
Okay.
all over the place. They've got stuff that's sad, stuff that's like relaxing, stuff that's more like a party time. So those two bands have been lately doing a lot for me as far as kind of reinforcing or validating whatever mood I'm in.
Okay. Who knew the dad from Bluey was in a band?
That's right. I mean, like, I had no idea, but I like to look into like who's the voice actor for this thing or whatever, and I saw that this guy was in this band. I was like, oh, I got to check it out.
That's so
And
funny.
yeah, and I was like, you know what, this is pretty awesome. So, you know,
All right. So, lastly, before I let you go, I know we've touched a couple times on the songwriting part of you and that brain, that brain activity and like not really being able to turn it off. But if someone were to like take away every instrument from you tomorrow, every like software app, everything that you use to like put together your music, do you think you would still be a songwriter?
yeah, I don't think I would be able to snap out of it, unfortunately. That's, I even with all the stuff that I've got, all the instruments and all the recording equipment,
Yeah.
like even with stuff like completely unreleased, like I still have a bunch of stuff just sitting up in my head. It just like I can't shut it off. Even if I don't release stuff, it's just like a tap that does not stop flowing. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for telling us more about your story today. And if anybody is looking into kind of like the catalog of music that you've worked on so far, can you tell us where we can find that, and then also where we might be able to follow you for things that are yet to be released?
well, um, I guess the easiest place to find anything that I'm doing would be my Instagram, which is at Jesus and the Complaint Department, or Jesus and the Complaint Department, if that other one makes you feel weird. Um, and I do have a website, but I don't know the link off the top of my head because it's a Wix site, so it's got like all that really long Wix stuff added. I can shoot you a link to it, and you can, I guess, put it in a description or something. But yeah, I don't have like a singular place where I have all of that, but I probably should. I'll probably just end up putting it all on my Wix site someday pretty soon, because I am, again, always working, revising all my older tracks right now, and I do plan to kind of like, I'm going to be going backwards in time, start with like the most recently written stuff, get that recorded, and just like kind of move backwards in batches until I have everything out of my way.
Yeah.
And where else would I put it other than, you know, I guess my own website. So
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down today and tell us more about it. Looking forward to hearing some of the stuff that you're revisiting from years ago. I would love to see what it morphs into today.
Yeah, it's no, it hasn't changed too much. Just just sounds a little bit more like what it was supposed to sound like originally. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been a really fun session, getting to know you and learn more about your music.
yeah, thanks for having me on.